All right, so here we are again with another video. This is yet another video that's based on Chapter 5. All right, I told you Chapter 5 has a lot of stuff in it that we use over and over and over again, and here we are. Okay, now I'll be honest with you though. I've shown you 3 methods of factoring so far. This will be our 4th method. It won't be the last one, but it'll be the last one for this chapter. I think there's one more in chapter 6 I'm going to show you, and then there's one more in chapter 9, which we'll get to next semester, okay, or in the spring semester. So, today's method is probably the one we use the least from here on out, but you are going to use it still, okay? Method 1, Method 2, and Method 3 are the most important ones, I'm not going to lie to you, but this one is very important. You're going to use it, again, not as frequently as the other ones, but you will use it still, okay? So, learn it. So, this one is called completing the square. Now, let me give you the reason behind why I teach you this and why we learn it. If you remember from the other videos, method 3 was the difference in squares. Obviously, you can't use a difference in square here. Okay. Yes, 4 and 9 and 1, all our A, B, and C numbers are all perfect squares, but there's no difference, and there's not just an A and a B. Okay, we don't just have 2 numbers, so we can't use that method. So that leaves us with method 1 or method 2. All right. Now let me show you why method 1 and method 2 don't work. Okay, because when I take A times C to get 9. And add together to give us 4, you have to ask yourself, all right, well, what numbers here add to give us 4 and multiply to give us 9? Well, let's just think. 3 times 3 doesn't work. 9 times 1 doesn't work, okay? What we've got here is a problem. We can't use this method, at least not yet, okay? So completing the square kind of gives us a way around this problem that we just ran into. Now, by now you've seen me work problems with the equal sign in it. It just means that at the end we're going to have to solve for our x's. Okay, that's all it means. So don't worry about it. Okay, so let me show you step 1. Step 1 is move C to other side. Okay, so we're going to move C to the other side. We're going to take this and move it over by subtracting 9 to give us x squared plus 4x equals, now, sorry, let me write it this way, equals negative 9, all right? Now, there's a reason that I'm writing it this way, okay? There's a reason I'm writing it this way. I'm leaving the space here, all right? Because what we're going to do is we're going to fill in this little blank spot here that I put in parentheses, okay? We're going to fill this in with something. This is step 2. This is the most important step we have, okay? Now again, if this is the first time you've seen it because you watched in advance of the lesson, congratulations. More than likely you're seeing this after I've taught it, so you know what I'm talking about already, okay? What we're going to do is we're going to fill in the parentheses, all right, with b over 2, then we're going to square it. All right, then we're going to square it. All right, so we're going to fill the parentheses with b over 2, and we're going to square it. So I'm going to go ahead and put the squared here. And again, what is our b? Our b is 4, and we're going to divide it by 2. All right, now I am fully aware that most of you already can say, well, Mr. Monroe, 4 divided by 2 is just 2. All right, so we have 2 squared equals negative 9. All right, so again, I know most of you know that. I'm going to write it in red over here so you don't forget, because this is the most important thing about completing the square. A bunch of stars over and everything. B over 2 squared is the key to everything. All right, now I do want to point something out here, because this is the step that everyone forgets, the next step, okay? Most people actually on the test every year I give this, no matter what completing the square problem I get, they get to this point okay. All right, they even do, well, they skip the next step and they move on and try and finish it, okay? But here's what's wrong. Notice, we have added 2 squared, or 4, to this side of the equation. Now, you should know that equations are like balancing things, okay? Everything has to be equal. So if I throw this 2 squared on the left side, what do I have to put on the other side to balance it? You have to add that 2 squared also, okay? Which, again, is just 4, all right? So I guess step 3 is add b over 2 squared to both sides. Okay. Again, it's like two scales. Okay, if you add 4 to the left side over here, you basically tip the scale in its favor, making this side unbalanced. So if you want to balance something out, you just put the exact same thing on the other side. So that's why we put this +4 here. Okay? All right. So there we go. Now, once you get past this, to be honest with you, you should be on the home stretch, the easy part here. Okay? So let me show you why. Because, well, first of all, -9 plus 4 we all know is going to be -5. All right? And, well, we'll deal with that because we've already done this. Okay, so watch how easy this is. All right? Your parentheses always fill in the same way. It's always going to be a parentheses with a squared on the outside. And it's always going to be x plus or minus whatever your b is. So in this case, it's going to be plus, because this is a +2. Okay? So you get x plus 2 squared equals -5. All right? Again, the parentheses, I guess let's do it this way. The parentheses are always going to be x plus or minus whatever that b over 2 is, and you square the whole thing. Okay? It will always be that. It will always be x plus or minus that b over 2, and then you square the whole thing. All right? So, again, not too bad. Now I want to walk you through the rest of the problem because there is more to this. All right? Again, whenever there's an equal sign, you got to tell me what x is. Okay, and we've done this by now. If you want to get rid of a squared on both sides, you must square root both sides. All right? These two cancel out. We've learned about this already. We'll actually go into a lot more detail about this later in the year. But for right now, just know that squares and square roots cancel each other out. So now we have x plus 2 is equal to the square root of -5. Now, I'm going to circle this because we did this in the previous section. I think it was 5-4, 5-5, I'm not sure. All right? We can't have negatives under square roots. Not allowed. Okay? But we learned how to deal with it. All right? And I taught you this, right? Whenever there's a negative, I want you to pull your eye out. Okay? Always pull your eye out. So this square root of -5 becomes I square root of 5. All right, and again, plus or minus, because you know, again, we've done this before, square roots are always plus and minus when there's an equal sign. Now, last step, if I want to get x by itself, we simply -2 on both sides, okay? And again, since -2 and I square roots of 5 aren't like terms, we have to write it this way. -2 plus or minus I square roots of 5. All right? So there you go. There's completing the square, all right? We simply went through, we got the c on the other side. We did the most important step here, right here, boxed in on red, right? b over 2 squared, all right? And again, we added it to both sides here. Please don't forget that step, all right? And then from there, we just solved it like we've been doing all year. So, all right, now I'm going to do a second one real quick just so you can see one more time. All right, now I'm making this up as I go, so let me run through one in my head real quick. Let's do x squared minus 6 and then plus, what number would work here? What did we use last time? Use 9. Let's use, no, that won't work. Let's use 8. 8 will work. Let's use 8 here, okay? X squared minus 6x plus 8 equals 0. Sorry guys, had to run through that real quick in my head just to make sure this was going to work for us. Okay, so this should work. Now, let me make sure. Okay, I didn't say this earlier, so I need to make sure I say this now. All right. One thing that I just completely skipped over, sorry. The one rule here that we have to follow is that A must equal 1. Okay, must. Notice up here we had an understood 1 for A. Down here we must also have an A for 1, and we do. Okay, so sorry, I skipped that, my fault. All right. Now, I'm going to go through this one a little quicker since you've already seen this a couple times now. All right. So the key is to get b over 2 squared, right? That's the whole point, b over 2 squared. Now to do that, we have to bring our c over to give us x squared minus 6x. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do this, guys. I suggest you do this also. Just kind of fill in your blanks as you go. Makes it easier. All right. So we have x squared minus 6x plus something squared equals -8. Right? Now again, the whole point, again, it's b over 2 squared, right? So when I put my b in, we're going to get -6 over 2 squared. All right? Now, negative 6 over 2 is 3. 3 squared is going to be 9, right? Because that's just going to be negative 3. Actually, no, let's just erase it. Make it easier to read. All right. It's going to be negative 3. And again, if I add a negative 3 squared to this side, I must do the same on the other. You have to keep everything balanced. Okay, it's kind of like a chemical equation for when you get to that in chemistry. All right? So, there we go. Now, this side's pretty easy. We get 1. And if you remember, I mean, I've got it right up here as you can see. All right, the parentheses for here are always going to be x plus or minus your b over 2 squared. So it's going to be x something squared. And notice, we have a minus 3 here, so what do? Minus 3 squared. Pretty easy. All right, and now we're on to solving. Square root both sides. Those are gone. Gives us x minus 3. And the square root of 1 is just what? Plus or minus 1. Please remember to put the plus or minus. It's a very important step. All right, now I'm going to add 3 to both sides. Now here's the problem. If you remember from the last problem, we had a square root and a number, not like terms. What do we have here though? 2 numbers that are like terms. So we have to do this for both times. We have to say, all right, this is the same as saying we have x equals 3 plus 1, and we also have x equals 3 minus 1. Because notice we have plus and minus here, all right? So we have 2 things. We have to account for both answers. So we get 3 plus 1 is 4, 3 minus 1 is 2. And there are your answers, okay? Now I realize most of you have already sat through the lecture in class when I did this, so again, I went fairly quickly through that second one because this is probably the 7th or 8th time you've seen this, all right? But I just wanted to make sure everyone has seen this twice now, 3, 4 times, all right? But please remember, the key is we can't factor this the way it is, all right? So that's why we move our c over like we did here or like we did down here, move the 8 over, all right? And we're going to make this factorable by putting in our b over 2, okay? b over 2, and we're going to square it. Now, what you add to one side here, you must add to the other side so that we can balance everything, all right? And then we fill in the parentheses, just like we wrote up there with x plus or minus b over 2 and squared. All right. So again, this was a minus 3 here, so we have a minus 3 here. All right. And then from there, you're just solving it. Okay, that's the easy part, really. So there's your lesson on completing squares yet again. Hopefully this helps with the homework some. I know I went through the first one really slow, the second one fast, but that's how things are, okay? So come see me with more questions. I'm there every morning like you know. They're really early. So come see me if you need help with anything, and good luck on the homework.